Nice to see you there, and also to Helia and to Suzanne. God bless you all. Well, happy feast day, everybody. Today is the feast day of St. Peter and St. Paul. A very important day, of course, in the whole church, particularly for those who belong to the Antiochian church, because St. Peter and St. Paul are our joint patrons of Antioch. Morning, Gary. Wave and blessing to you as well, which is always a good thing. Good morning to Anton. Happy little Thursday to you too. And it's a nice Thursday. Beautiful weather here today. I hear it's going to be raining, doing all sorts of other grim things in other parts of the country. But right now, right here, it's just gorgeous, really gorgeous. Not too hot, but sunny, really pretty. The odd cloud floating around and so on, which makes it look really good. I always like the idea of Little Thursday, getting us all ready for the weekend. Did you say Little Thursday? You meant Little Friday, presumably. Anyway, today we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 20, verses 9 to 19, so that's 11 verses. But in fact, we're only going to be studying verses 9 maybe through to 13, and then look at the rest of them not tomorrow, but next Wednesday, probably, maybe even Thursday, because next Monday and Tuesday I will be going down to London to collect Matthew from the airport, which is very late at night, 10 past 10 or something, so it'll probably be about 10:30, 11 o'clock before he's actually sprung from the airport, and then we'll be staying overnight in that area and then coming back on Tuesday. There's no hurry to get back on Tuesday, so we won't have this then. It's hard to believe that it's an entire year since off he went. That time has gone very rapidly indeed in my mind. I think he's learned a huge amount. It's been a fantastic experience. He spent the whole time in Lebanon, either in Balamand or in various other monasteries in Lebanon. So it's been very good for him. Good morning, Bev. Good morning, Stella. On a coach of 30 people of the Dementia Club. Well, if that's like spending time with my mother, are they constantly asking, where are we going? Good morning, Aaron. Your prayers? Right, God bless you. On the way to Southend. That's very good. A friend of mine taught in Southend for a while. It was a very dangerous experience. The kids were very dangerous. Anyway, here we go. Chapter 20 of Luke, verse 9. And you might be getting the idea that actually things really move very rapidly. Morning, Natalia. Move very rapidly indeed in Luke. It's not like John, where John focuses in, he narrows the point down. So you spend an awful long time on one prayer of the Lord. But here, or in Mark, where Mark divides this week up into each of the 7 days, and you get something about most of them. Whereas Luke, okay, we've arrived in Jerusalem now. The Lord is going to tell you that he's the Messiah, and then on to other things. Chapter 20, verse 9. Then Jesus began to tell the people this parable. A certain man planted a vineyard, leased it to vine dressers, and went to a far country for a long time. Now at vintage time, he sent a servant to the vine dressers, that they might give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the vine dressers beat him and sent him away empty-handed. Again he sent another servant, and they beat him also, treated him shamefully, and sent him away empty-handed. And again he sent a third, and they wounded him also, and cast him out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, what shall I do? I will send my beloved son. Probably they will respect him when they see him. That's as far as we're going to go today, but we'll have the rest of the story. But when the vine dressers saw him, they reasoned among themselves, saying, this is the heir. "Come, let us kill him, that the inheritance may be ours." So they cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. Therefore, what will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy those vine dressers and give the vineyard to others. And when they heard it, they said, "Certainly not." Then he looked at them and said, "What then is this that is written? The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Whoever falls on that stone will be broken, but on whomever it falls, it will grind him to powder." And the chief priests and the scribes at that very hour sought to lay hands on him, but they feared the people, for they knew that he had spoken this parable against them. Now, you have to remember what we were talking about yesterday and before, and that was the question, which was, who gave Jesus this authority? Where did he get it from? Okay, remember they came, so the chief priests, the scribes, and the nobility, the chief amongst the people, they come along, they say, "By what authority did you do these things?" Throughout the moneylenders, and who gave you this authority? And this parable is meant to answer that question. And they get the point at the end, and it doesn't please them at all. Not those three anyway. So verse 9, "Then he," that's Jesus, "began to tell the people this parable. A certain man planted a vineyard." Okay. Now, the first thing is he's talking to the people. It says here, he began to tell the people. It's interesting, in Matthew, he says he told it to the chief priests and the scribes and the nobility. But here, Luke is saying they were listening in. We don't know which is right, it doesn't really matter. The church fathers tend to say, well, they left out the people for the sake of brevity in Matthew. Anyway, he's talking to the people and the priests are listening in. And he says, a certain man planted a vineyard. Now, that would immediately, in the minds of those priests and scribes and a lot of the other people, have cast their mind back immediately to two other things. The one is Isaiah chapter 5, verses 1 through 7, which we'll read in a moment. And the other one is Psalm 79 in the Septuagint. So that's Psalm 80 in Protestant and Catholic Bibles, verses 9 to 20, where a vineyard is mentioned. And this theme of a vineyard becomes quite strong within Israel, as indeed it is within the new Israel, Christianity. Okay, so let's have a look to see what the holy prophet Isaiah has to say about this. So it's Isaiah chapter 5, verses 1 through 7. I can see other people popping up from time to time, but I can't read what you're saying because it disappears again. We'll have to wait until the end. So if you're asking any questions, they'll have to wait a bit. Chapter 5, Isaiah, verse 1. God is speaking. Now I will sing to my beloved a song of my beloved regarding my vineyard. There was a vineyard for my beloved, a place in power and richness. He placed a wall around it and fortified it. He planted it with the choicest vine. He built a tower in its midst and also made a winepress in it. So I waited for it to bring forth grapes, but it produced thorn plants. And now, man of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem, judge between me and my vineyard. What shall I yet do for my vineyard that I have not done for it? For I waited for it to bring forth grapes, but it brought forth thorn plants. But now I will tell you what I shall do to my vineyard. I shall remove its wall, and it shall be for booty. I shall break down its wall, and it shall be trampled underfoot. I will forsake my vineyard. It shall not be pruned or cultivated, but thorns shall sprout forth as in a barren land. I will also command the clouds not to rain on it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the man of Judah is his beloved plant. I waited for it to bring forth judgment, but it brought forth lawlessness, not righteousness, but a cry. Carries on somewhat like that from then onwards, the rest of this chapter, right the way down to the idea that at the end of the chapter, in verse 13, it talks about the utter destruction of Jerusalem, of Israel, leaving only a 10th part left, the faithful remnant of the people, everything else utterly destroyed. So when the Lord starts speaking about a vineyard in this way, the chief priests and the scribes and the others would have pricked up their ears and said, he's talking about us. And he's saying that we have brought forth only a shout, brought forth instead of grapes and other things, only weeds, thorn bushes, things that are of no use and no purpose. And therefore they would have been pretty immeasurably angry with him. Later on it says they want to kill him. The word used actually means utterly destroy. The same word, interesting, the Lord also uses. Good morning, Rebecca. No, it's interesting because Ahmed, hijacking, it's Ahmed. Well, actually, Ahmed, I'm going to talk about that also in a minute. So that's quite an interesting thing that you picked that up. Okay? So everybody would have been full of knowledge of this idea of Israel as a vineyard, and they would have been beginning to gnash their teeth. Let's carry on and listen to what the Lord says. A certain man planted a vineyard. He listed the vine dressers. So that then gives you the idea he's talking about Isaiah. In Isaiah, of course, the vineyard itself is rebuked. Whereas in this parable, it's the tenants who look after the vineyard being the ordinary people, and the tenants being the nobility and the priests and the scribes, the Pharisees, and those leaders like that. Listened to the vine dressers and went to a far country for a long time. So that's interesting by itself, isn't it? God doesn't micromanage the vineyard. The tenants know how to look after the vineyard, and either they don't, and it brings forth nothing but thorns, which is one way of looking at it, and about half the church fathers say, oh look, they had nothing to give anybody because there are only thorns there anyway, they didn't do their job. Or alternatively, they looked after the vineyard very well, but kept the entire vintage for themselves. Doesn't really matter which way you look at it. Either of those is a perfectly reasonable way of interpreting what happens next. But anyway, God is not micromanaging it. It's assumed that those who have the tendency know what to do. And here we can look at the quote that Ahmed, Subdeacon Ahmed, has brought before us. It's Psalm 79, verses 9 to 20. And this also, whenever I hear the bishop saying this, causes me to stroke my beard and think, it's a bit of a shocker, this one too. Anyway, shall we go and look at that? Here we go, Psalm. Always used to amuse me. People used to say to me, mainly Protestants used to say to me, God has a lot to say to me from Isaiah. So really, why is that? Well, I open the Bible randomly and it often falls open at Isaiah and I read that. I say to them, did it ever occur to you that Isaiah is right in the very middle of the Bible? Anyway, that's just me being evil. So Psalm 79, I'm going to read verses 9 through 20. You removed a vineyard from Egypt. You cast out the nations and planted it. You prepared the way before it, and you planted its roots, and the earth was filled. Its shade covered the mountains, and its vines the cedars of God. Its branches reached to the sea, and its shoots as far as the river. Why did you pull down its hedge, and all those who passed on the road gathered its grapes? A wild swine from the forest laid it waste. A solitary wild beast devoured it. The God of hosts, convert us now. Look down from heaven and behold and visit this vineyard, which your right hand planted and perfected. That's the quotation that Ahmed told us, which the bishop says when he blesses the people with the 3 candles and the 2 candles. They call the Trakiri and the Kiri. It's a rather wonderful thing to watch. If you've not seen it, get on to, it's more than a wonderful thing to watch, it's a glorious thing. Get onto the internet and see if you can find it on YouTube somewhere. Maybe I can find one posted underneath here, because it's very beautiful to watch. It's part of the Trisagion hymn during the Divine Liturgy when there's a bishop there. Anyway, I'll talk about that in a moment. O God of hosts, verse 15, convert us now, look down from heaven and behold, and visit this vineyard which your right hand planted, and perfect it, and visit the Son of Man, whom you strengthened for yourself. It was set on fire and uprooted, but they shall perish at the rebuke of your face. Let your hand be upon the man of your right hand, and upon the Son of Man, whom you strengthened for yourself. Then we will not turn away from you. You will give us life, and we will call upon your name. O Lord God of hosts, convert us, and reveal your face, and we shall be saved. Now, if only those priests and scribes and nobility knew it, that very psalm prophecy was being fulfilled in their presence. And when the bishop blesses everybody with a Trakiri and Dakiri and sings these words, then also that prophecy is being fulfilled in the Divine Liturgy. Good morning, Patrick, your prayers. When the bishop has the Trakiri and Dakiri, so that's a candlestick with 3 candles in it, and a candlestick with 2 candles in it, and he blesses the people with it, he makes the sign of the cross over them. The 3 candles represent God the Holy Trinity, and the 2 candles represent our Lord, both God and man, in his 2 natures, fully God and fully man, fully human. Okay? And that, when he blesses, crossing these over and blessing everybody. It's beautiful and a rich moment within the liturgy that always makes my body tingle when you see this prophecy of the presence of the Lord being made so descriptive and so beautiful amongst us when the bishop is there. Okay? Now, these ideas of this vineyard would have made these chief priests et al. Very cross indeed. Okay? So, come and see some of the vineyard. Whoa. But what happens? Verse 10. Now, at vintage time, he sent a servant to the vine dressers. And the word there, servant, is doulos, which means slave, or doulos. When I was a schoolboy, if you were in the lower 2 forms, you were called a dowel, a doulos, a slave. And the oldest boys in the house were called jouts, I've no idea what drought means. It was part and parcel of the school's own language, and I don't think anybody, by the time I was there, we're talking about 50 years ago, of course, knew what the word drought meant. But dowel came from doulos, slave. And the jouts would shout out, dowel! And we used to have to run from wherever we were, and the last one to get there got the job. What a miserable time that was. Now at vintage time, he sent a slave to the vine dressers. They might give him some of the fruit of the vineyard, which he was perfectly entitled to do. The Lord sends somebody at the right time, at the Keron, at the opportune moment, the vintage time that means, the harvest time. He sends his servant, not for all of the fruit, but some of the fruit of the vineyard, his rightful payment in response to all that the Lord has done for this vineyard. He's planted it, he's led it there, he's transplanted it from Egypt, we find from Isaiah. He's built a hedge or a wall around it. He's looked after it. He's done everything he's meant to do, put in a wine press and a tower, etc., etc. And what does he find? Well, nothing. But the first one, they beat him and sent him away empty-handed. Either because they had kept the grapes for themselves, or they had allowed to go to rack and ruin. Again, he sent another servant, verse 11, and they beat him also, treated him shamefully, and sent him away empty-handed. So you can see there's a degree of increase in the evil they do to these people, the slaves that the man sends. And again, he sent a third, and they wounded him also and cast him out. So again, another increase on what has happened. Now, even casting him out, the word there is exbalo, from which we get the word exit, and also ballistics, being thrown. So he's being literally thrown out. You imagine him hitting the dust of the road as he is chucked out of the vineyard. Now, the three prophets there, some of the fathers try and say, well, this one is this one, and this one is this one, and this one is that one. And then another church father has a different three prophets, and a third one says, well, they just represent all the prophets. And that generally, that last one is what people tend to think nowadays, that the three prophets means you're looking at everybody God sent, and all of them have a pitiful reception. And you can see that if you read the prophets of the Old Testament, beginning at Moses, who is treated shamefully, and where he sits there thinking, this lot, they give me the jip. I'm tired of them. Jonah, of course, gets cross with God. I wish I was dead, he said. I'm sick of you, God, behaving like this. And then, of course, others are murdered, they're beaten, they're sawn in half, they go around in sheepskins, all the rest of it, poverty and disgrace, etc., etc., etc. But it's meant to be all of them. And by this stage, the chief priests and others are going to be pretty cross, because they can see already that this is against them. But now there's a twist in the tale. And this is the bit where the Lord really strongly announces who he is. Because you have to go back to that psalm and also in Isaiah, where it's God's own son who sends. Okay? Then the owner of the vineyard said, what shall I do? God doesn't need to ask himself questions like that. He knows all along what's going to happen. I will send my beloved son. Now, that's quite interesting because my beloved, my agapitos, it appears at the Transfiguration. This is my agapitos, my beloved one. And it also appears at the baptism. This is my agapitos, in whom I am well pleased. Okay? I will send my agapitos, my beloved one. And we're meant to have that in our minds. Luke is not just writing for the chief priests and for the people, but he's writing for the church. And we're meant to say, oh yeah, that's the Lord. But also, the chief priests, they've got this in their mind also. And if you go back to that psalm, what does it say? Let your right hand be upon the man of your right hand, upon the Son of Man, whom you strengthened for yourself. Then we will not turn away from you. So send the Son of God, and we won't return away from you. But, of course, we know they do. So the owner of the vineyard said, what shall I do? I'll send my beloved Son, the one that has been prophesied in Psalm 79. Probably they respect him when they see him. That word there, probably, is the word isos, which hasn't got the strength in Greek as the word probably has in English. It's more like perhaps. Okay? In Arabic, say yumkin. Possibly, maybe they'll respect him. And we know that as the Lord looks around that crowd of people, the chief priests there are biting the edges of their shawls, saying themselves, how dare he speak like this? Doesn't he know who, this peasant from where? Nazareth, did you say? Coming from Galilee with that rich peasant accent of his? How dare he? They, of course, would have had their very posh Eton and Harrow accents, maybe Marlborough, and looking down their long noses at him, who is God, with his peasant accent, and Peter and all the others. Paul would not have had a peasant accent, by the by, and cross, very cross, furious. And we'll see what happens next, God willing, Wednesday, maybe Thursday. We'll see how we get on. I might be too tired on Wednesday, we'll just see. Okay, so we'll end that there. Ahmed has a son. Ahmed's son, his Orthodox name is Peter, so may God grant Peter many years because it's his name day. Also, who watches this is Paula. God grant you many years, Paula, on your name day. And all those Peters and Pauls and female versions of the same word. I can't think of Peter. What are female versions of Peter? And Paulas and Paulines and so on. God grant you many years. Let us have a look to see if there are any questions that people have been asking. There are people turning up and so on. There's Stella on her coach on the way to Southend. How many times have you told them so far, Stella? Well, it's like my mother. It's one of those funny things. You just have to say, okay, I just have to regard this as being one of those interesting things that's happening nowadays. You say for the umpteenth time in one short conversation what you're having for supper, as an example. Yeah, we dealt with that. So Patrick, your prayers. Petra, yes, I suppose so. Female name, very popular in Slovakia. Oh, really? That's an interesting thing. I had no idea. I don't know how to put any responses on this either. Okay, so keep each other in your prayers, please. I hope that was useful and helpful to you. I guess Simon, Dina is Simon. Today is also his name day as well, so please keep Simon in your prayers today. And also Barbara, newly bereaved, and Christina's Elizabeth, and Judy, of course, and Erin's Joseph. And we'll leave that there for today. Right, God bless you, keep you, have a happy feast. Today the fast is ended. The next fast is not all that far away, so make the most of this feast day. God bless you and keep you. May He shine the light of His countenance upon you and have mercy upon you. And pray for me too. I think I saw earlier on, actually, what did I see there? Something just came up and went away. No, can't see anything there. Oh, you're there, Erin. God bless you and keep you. It's very early for you. Worth it. Your prayers.